Welcome to Comics Bazaar, the channel of comics commentary and arcana. This video features Wolverine number 32, cover dated October 1990. This is a fantastic cover by Marc Silvestri, inked by Dan Green. It's completely inked in brush, and it really gives an indication of what Dan Green could do with an ink brush at the time and make Marc Silvestri's pencils look so organic and so dynamic at the same time. One of the effects that I really like on the cover is the samurai blade that is sticking right through Wolverine's chest and out his back, and just how the blade is indicated, just with pure white there against the black background of the shadow on Wolverine's chest and torso, and then the coat of this character here, this Yakuza called Goro. So on the cover we've got captions as well against the blade of the Yakuza. So we've got Wolverine's adamantium claws against that samurai blade, but also this featuring a totally surreal visit from Jean Grey. And that was a feature of Larry Hama's run on the title, where we would also get these weird visits and psychedelic type visits to Wolverine's psyche, his mind, his unconscious, and we get a little bit of that in this issue as well. So let's open this one up to the splash page, and this is exactly where we are in this kind of like trippy space of Wolverine. He's unconscious, and this is what he's kind of hallucinating. So these three characters, he fought them at the end of the previous issue, he defeated them, but they're here menacing him in these dragon forms, these Japanese type dragon forms. Very cool art here by Silvestri. The creative team, Larry Hama script, Marc Silvestri pencils. So Larry Hama would have given Marc Silvestri a kind of like a Marvel style plot for this, and Silvestri doing the storytelling himself, and then Hama coming back with the dialogue and captions. Dan Green on inks, Pat Brousseau lettering, and Glynis Oliver, long time Uncanny X-Men colorist, on the coloring for this particular issue as well. And one of the things that I'm going to be pointing out in this issue, Marc Silvestri doesn't like straight lines, doesn't like ruling out straight lines, doesn't like gridding out a page, likes to work with unaided pencils, noodling and then finding the details. And you'll see that in this particular issue, and you'll also see in terms of the collaboration with Dan Green also not using a ruler for the straight lines. So this is the kind of page and composition that Silvestri enjoys drawing, and yeah, I think we as readers enjoy looking at it too. So the dragon here is menacing. Wolverine, gaze into my eyes, little man, and tremble at the prospect of your own doom. Now what's Logan's response to that going to be? You're the one who ought to be shaking, because I'm about to carve you up into sushi. That's hilarious. Title of the story, Terminal Trauma. And as I said, it picks up immediately from the end of the previous issue. So we're still in this kind of psychic space. The dragons now, as Wolverine carves them up with his adamantium claws, take on human form. It's the forms of the three antagonists that he dispatched in the previous issue. We've got these lightning bolts around them because they were on this particular drug called Zap, and they're here crowding around him, menacing him, and they're saying we're riding the Thunderbolt, the Thunderbolt, the Thunderbolt. So this is something that Wolverine is going to learn a little bit more about in this issue and the next issue in terms of what exactly it is that they're talking about. But great art on these pages, and as I said, very clearly Silvestri in his element and enjoying himself. One thing I'll point out is I think Silvestri's been looking at Mike Mignola, who was working at Marvel at the time. Some of the spotting of black reminds me of Mignola, and also the pose that he's doing on Wolverine as well. This huge back and the short little legs. That was a feature of Mignola's version of Wolverine from this particular era. And then we snap into the present. Wolverine emerges from unconsciousness, and who's looking after him except for Tiger and Archie Corrigan, the pilot who has been hanging out with at the Princess Bar that he half owns in this particular era in his civilian identity as Patch. So he asks Tiger where he is, and they're in Hightown, Madripoor, her penthouse. Archie and I brought you here, and that would have been at the end of the previous issue. After you got into a free-for-all, Archie says, throw them with a busload of Yakuza gangsters down at the Princess Bar. So we get a little bit of kind of backstory in the expositional dialogue here. And in any case, Wolverine kind of snaps to. He says that he's still breathing, but just barely. When I'm hurt this bad, the healing gets slow. Now, that's interesting because at this particular time in Marvel continuity, Wolverine has been recovering from the beating he took from the Reavers and the crucifixion and torture in Uncanny X-Men 151. Sorry, not 151, 251. And his healing factor is under pressure, and it's slowed down from what it used to be. And that was something that Chris Claremont was exploring in his overarching grand plot for the X-Men at this time. I'll just show you at the end of this issue. There's an advertisement that gives you an indication of where we are in X-Men continuity. So this is advertising the Extinction Agenda. So that's where things are continuity-wise. So Wolverine heads out onto the balcony of Tiger's apartment penthouse, and he says, "No time to rest. Somebody out there is out to do unto me, and it behooves me to do unto him first." I like that reconfiguration of Jesus's principle, kind of ethical principle of doing unto others as you would have done unto you, and Wolverine kind of twisting it here in terms of like getting the adamantium claw in first. That's funny stuff. So he asks Tiger, "What's the story? Are the Prince and Koi in on this too? No keeping anything from you, is there?" "Not hardly, darling," he says. That's a nice little panel as well. And, the point I was making earlier, if you look and you examine the backgrounds here, there are no straight lines. So this perspective is done with, I think it's done by eye, really. Or if Silvestri did use any gridding out, it would have been absolutely minimal. But the inking is without a straight edge, that's for sure. So Dan Green is inking this freehand with his set of inking tools, and I think he's probably moving between the brush and also using I think some pens as well at certain points. And I'll point out one page in particular where I think he's using pen rather than ink brush. But you can see on certain panels like this one that this is all ink brush that he's using there. So now we get into the kind of the overarching plot point, which is this drug that's being extracted from the brains of these particular monkeys that live in the highlands of Madripoor. So they're stunned with this gas, and then they're caught and hauled away on the back of these trucks. And in the dialogue here, we get catch up on information we got in the previous issue regarding the criminal arrangements around the harvesting, as Daikumo says here, of the monkeys. And this is the doctor who is overseeing the removal of the serum from their brains. He says, "Speaking of brains, these monkeys have rather large ones, plenty of hypothalamic fluid to extract as a catalyst for a cancer cure drug." Now, the mountain native has a question, and his question is, "I no understand why lowlanders steal all little people. Not good. Take all, no leave for next time." And someone says here, "The savage is impudent. Should I shoot him? No, he's just curious. Don't you Montanards eat monkey meat?" So Montanard is like mountain people. Yes, mountain people eat monkey also. We eat wild pig, deer, river fish, birds and taro root, but never all. Always leave. Lowlanders eat monkey? In our manner of speaking, yes. We eat the monkey, we eat his brain, and it makes us see God, says the doctor. And I like this panel here, and surely Silvestri was using some photo reference for this, but the native, the mountain native says, "You now have to eat monkey to see God. You just have to open eyes." I like that line. That's very good from Hama. And it puts me in mind of the fact that this particular comic, Hama at the time, he's the writer on G.I. Joe. G.I. Joe is explicitly marketed to young boys, to children. And here on Wolverine, he gets a chance to write stories that are a little bit more adult in orientation while still being Comics Code approved. In my opinion, the way that Hama writes this stuff it is for mature readers, also without involving quote unquote mature content like really explicit gore or sex and so on and so forth. So yeah, I'm enjoying rereading these issues of Wolverine because of that, those factors. So here we have a little switch scene where Daikumo is checking in with his underlings, Goro here and Raiko, regarding, he gets a call from them, from Goro, concerning a problem. And look here again in terms of the perspective. So Silvestri is eyeballing this perspective, no straight lines, but it works. It's interesting how he does that. And also with the sports car here, it seems to me like he's not using reference for that. Rather, he's drawing it out of his mind's eye. But it looks pretty good. So he's had practice drawing these kinds of cars and is confident enough to draw them without photo reference at this point. Also, a little thing such as like an inside shot of a car like this. This is difficult to do in terms of getting the perspective and proportions right. So it really does seem like he's placed the camera exactly in here on the dashboard in front of Goro. Yeah, the perspective works. And again, no straight lines here. Everything done freehand and looking really credible and very very much possessed of verisimilitude. So he's looking up using these binoculars at the balcony that Wolverine is standing out on with Tiger and also Archie there. And he's saying that Wolverine is alive. He's still alive. So Daikuma's not happy with that. He'd been promised in the previous issue he was dead. And Goro says he must have had help. He wiped out Dragonhead and 20 of our toughest soldiers. He's at Tiger's penthouse, and that pilot is with them too. So, what is going to happen next? Well, his boss isn't happy. He says it was your job to oversee the elimination of this obstacle. Honor dictates that you make good on the failure of your subordinates or forfeit a finger. So that's like the kind of conventional or customary punishment for Yakuza, losing a finger if they fail in some particular duty or other. You'll see to it personally. So Goro says, I won't let you down, Daikuma. And also he's to bring proof of Wolverine's demise. Now this page in particular, everything on this page inked by brush. You can see the quality of the line work here, this thickness of the line, thick to thin, and also just the dashes, the hatch marks there on the back of the seat. So well done. And again, you can see with that sports car there, the rear view of it, that Silvestri's definitely drawing that out of his mind's eye rather than using any kind of reference. Same here again. And it looks believable. So they've got a plan. He's got a Polaroid camera in order to bring proof of Wolverine's demise. But I like the little bickering here between Goro and Raiko. And also we learn why Raiko's along with him. So he tells her to take the camera and you'd better improve your mood, Raiko. You know how I get after I kill. And she says here, you might have bought up my father's gambling debt markers, but you don't own my soul. I may belong to you, but I don't even have to pretend that I like anything about you. That's the kind of dialogue that I like from Larry Hama's script here. And more again on this page, and this is a funny couple of panels up here, where Wolverine's, who's supposed to be recovering from the beating he took and the puncture wounds he took in the previous issue. He's smoking a cigar and he's thinking about the whole Daikumo business, what he's learned from Tiger. And then just this is hilarious. So as he's taking a drag on the cigar and inhaling it into his lungs, you're not supposed to do that. It's coming out of his chest. And a little pink mist as well, obviously picking up blood as well on the way out. So he's just very matter-of-fact about it, still leaking a bit. No exclamation mark. He's cool as a cucumber. You two stepping out? And they say yes. So Archie's off to the Princess Bar to check on the half that's left standing. And Wolverine is adamant that the half that's still standing is his half and not O'Donnell's half. And that's a point he made in the previous issue as well. So that's pretty funny too. And Tiger's off to make some inquiries among her underworld cronies. They're bound to know where Daikumo is staying. And Wolverine says, if I ain't breathing when you get back, roll me over and use me for a rug. So I just like that kind of earthy and dry humor that Hama writes for Wolverine in his dialogue. So the two exit, take the lift down, and Tiger has some of her goons guarding the apartment. Archie says to her, those boys are rough, huh? The roughest, she says. But just as their elevator door is closing, this one opens, and we know who this is from the silhouettes there. It's Goro and Raiko. And he's got his bunch of flowers, but could there really be flowers there in the bouquet? Just to get the pronunciation right. And I like the way that Silvestri draws these goons with their jutted out bottom lips and chins as well. It's really well done, and of course the way he does drapery too, so good. So this goon rips off Goro's shirt, and then they expose his back in order to see this tattoo, skin art as they call it, of Kwannon, the goddess of mercy, the Japanese goddess of mercy. And Goro says, what, is it not truly merciful that undeserving sinners like you may gaze upon the glory of the Mother of Mercy and carry that shining image to your graves? So the bouquet was a disguise for a blade. Also, you can see here that there's a little splotch of magenta on my copy of my comic here. So that's the kind of thing that could happen at the time. And also, I have to point out, every video she does it, Glynis Oliver, a moment of emotional violence and or actual violence, she'll colour the background in red. That's what we're getting here. So Goro takes out with one swing of his blade. It looks like 3 of the goons. This guy has enough time to pull a pistol on him, but he's caught from behind by Raiko, and that dispatches them. So this is a little funny bit here as well, where Goro says, ha, you really do care about me? And she says dismissively, don't flatter yourself. The shot would have been heard in the penthouse. Again, I like that from Hama, that kind of hard-boiled dialogue that he's come up with. Now, this is a great page as well. Great panel here, Wolverine popping his claws. Again, that Glynis Oliver colouring his hand all in red and streaking the blades themselves with a little bit of magenta there. It's an interesting choice. So he's coming up to the door, he's groggy, but he says in his first person narration, but I'm still mean enough to rock and roll. And he's smelling, using his heightened senses to sniff what's on the other side of the door. Blood, steel, perfume. Perfume, that catches his attention. Just who is out there, and why are they being so quiet? Everything here inked with the brush again. You can see that Dan Green is not ruling out any of these lines. This must have been fun for him to ink. Looks really great. So then Goro puts his blade right through the door, and it hits meat, as he said, and Wolverine screams, but then he claws his way out the door, and here he is. So that's the scene that we saw on the cover. He's got that samurai blade running right through his chest and out his back, and he looks bestial. He's in a berserker fury now. As Goro says, he can't be human. Yeah. And I love even something like this. Look at the shattering wood of the door as well, and how Silvestri's rendered that. And here, so good. And again, just perfectly complemented by Dan Green's inks as well. Let's get past this ad. And, okay, so remember, Wolverine's healing factor after Uncanny X-Men 251 is very slowed down. He's taken quite the beating and cuts and all the rest of it in the previous issue. So this, on top of all of that, seems to kill him. And that, in any case, is what Goro believes. So he asks for the Polaroid camera, takes a picture. And also we get a little story from him about how only a blade wielded by a dead man can slay him, he says to Raiko. That was the last prophecy of the blind seer, how would I pronounce this? Mongaku, just before I separated his head from his body. So Raiko asks him, well, why did you do that? Kill the seer? To seal the prophecy in blood and to prevent retractions. But we'll have to remember that prophecy for the next issue. And here we get this totally surreal visit by Jean Grey. So Wolverine once again in unconsciousness, and he's kind of hallucinating, having some kind of type of dream there. And we get in the first person narration him saying that he feels it's cold, colder than the north wind howling off the great slave lake in February, so cold it burns like a spear of hot ice through my soul, but I don't care, because I'm just drifting lazily toward that bright, friendly light at the end of the darkness. There's warmth there and rest from all this weariness. All I have to do is let this cold, shining thing in my chest carry me there. And then that's when he sees this vision of Jean. So obviously he's dying, and then he sees the vision of Jean, and he asks, "What are you doing here, Jean, darling? What, you've been to this place before, back when you were dying on the space shuttle? Dying? Where am I, Jean?" So that's really interesting callback to Uncanny X-Men continuity. And also just look at the way that this kind of diaphanous robe around Jean has been rendered here in the inks as well. So good. And also look at all the details here for kind of creating this psychedelic space that Wolverine is transiting through as well, psychically, astrally, whatever words you want to put on it. Nicely done by Dan Green in the inks. Let's continue. We get a nice panel here, close up on Jean. That's nicely drawn by Silvestri. That, you know, like, we all know that he's so good at drawing women, beautiful women in particular, and what a rendering of Jean he does there. And then she points at the chest wound, the shining thing in his chest. He realizes it's got to come out. But what about the warm brightness? I want to be there, that brightness at the end of the dark. You say it'll always be waiting there for me, but now I got to pull out this shining thing. Well, if that's what I got to do, whoa, something like a freight train full of hurt running through my heart. One thing I got to know, Jean, is that really you? And so obviously this bright light that he's pulling at is the samurai sword that's stuck through his chest on the physical plane. But before I move on to the next page, I just want to note like the anatomy here, the way that it's rendered. You can see like how brawny Wolverine is, and also again Dan Green's hatching line marks as well, looking so well, rendering the sinew and muscle on Wolverine's arm as he's pulling at that light. And there it is on the physical plane. He's pulled out the samurai sword. So good. And also such an interesting shot here by Silvestri to have the goons here, one of them in the foreground dead on the floor, and Wolverine in the background pulling out that sword. And just at that point, Tiger and Archie arrive back, and of course they're astounded by what they see. And Wolverine says, yeah, these guys almost had me pushing up petunias. Not these guys, but who attacked him almost had me pushing up petunias, except I had a little help from an old friend. The reference to Jean. So he's straight to business. You rattle some cages down in Lowtown. You find out where those slimy hyenas slink off to when they're not trying to cancel my ticket. And Tiger's got the info. A warehouse in Lowtown by the docks. I like this close-up on Wolverine's face here. Help me up. I'm about to get me some payback, even if I had to drag myself down there to get it. So no time to pause, no time to heal. He's straight out the door, more action. So here in this particular scene, we get a lot of expositional dialogue regarding what's being manufactured from the fluids extracted from the monkey brains. And it's not a cancer cure. The cancer cure is just a cover story for the Prince of Madripoor. Really what they're interested in only is creating this drug, Zap, because it's so easily manufactured from such a small amount of the monkey brain serum. And Daikumo explains here, and further refinement of Zap yields a super drug we call the Thunderbolt. And that's what those three guys were on at the opening of the issue and at the end of the previous issue. And Daikumo explains, one dose of which imparts superhuman strength, endurance, total pain suppression, and an ultimate ecstatic rapture that lasts for an hour and ends in death. So really what he's interested in is this Thunderbolt drug. But the doctor asks a question about it that the reader would be asking. I never did understand your preoccupation with Thunderbolt, Daikumo. I can understand the profit potential of Zap, but do you really think that people will pay $10,000 for a drug that will kill them? So the guy's laughing here. Again, look at the inking on the face and the rendering of the fat of his jowls and the line of his neck there as well. So well done. And this chauffeur goon here in the background as well. So well done. So Daikumo's laughing and he says, oh, the hilarity of it. Don't you think that people know that alcohol and tobacco and saturated fats will kill them? People know that alcohol and tobacco and saturated fats will kill them in horrible, prolonged and painful ways that will bankrupt their families emotionally and fiscally, and they still persist in consuming them. At least Thunderbolt lets them go out with a bang. So clearly that was something that Hama wanted to work in here to the comic, and it's interesting because it kind of balances in terms of what the reader might make of that, because what he's saying is true enough, but also he's a psychopath on top of everything else. But I like also the detail in the background of the chauffeur guy, the bodyguard, pushing away this homeless person just in the background, just completely ignoring him, smacking him away, just giving you a sense of how unconcerned they are with the plight of these people who are, it will be revealed shortly, are drug addicted themselves. So kind of like showing the two sides of the drug trade, like the ones that are making the profit and basically their attitude to the people they're selling to. So this is an interesting page here where they're getting on this seaplane. They're going to Japan, and Goro and Raiko turn up, bowing to Daikumo, and then Goro presents him with the Polaroid of Wolverine with the samurai sword stuck right through his chest. And this is interesting here. So it looks like what has been done in this particular panel is we have a blow up of the photo here. So that's like a mechanical blow up of the photo. So that would have been done with a photocopier or something of that order. That's interesting. Just saves a little bit of time. I like the detailing, or the rendering rather, of the hands here. Hands very difficult to draw. Silvestri, an expert at them. Looks very good. And so they're off to Osaka on the seaplane. And then we have Tiger driving her Lamborghini down to Lowtown and to the particular warehouse that was identified by our criminal cronies. And en route, Wolverine marvels at all of the homeless and drug-addicted people down here. He says, they having a drugged out zombie convention in Lowtown or what? When did it get this bad? And Tiger says it has always been this bad. You just never looked. So that's an interesting little exchange as well. So they arrive at the warehouse where Daikumo is staying, but he's gone. Like, we know he's gone. Wolverine gets out of the car and he smells death. Lots of death. And something else. You stay in the car. Let me check this out. So she does. He enters the warehouse here. This is an interesting panel. Just we have this wide shot of the entrance of the warehouse. This small image of Wolverine mostly in silhouette entering. And then this shot. And again, he's in, like the scale here. We've got a tiny figure for him. And just an implication of mountains of these corpses of the monkeys. And he's taken aback badly. Why? Why would anybody do this? And here's the mountain native from earlier. So he's there too. It's a bit strange that he would be there, but he's there nonetheless. And he's there to explain. They killed the little people of the forest so that they could eat their brains. They said that by eating their brains they could see God. So he looks pretty nonplussed too at what's happened. And he asks the question, but what kind of God do you see after you've done this? Wolverine doesn't answer that. He just has a question. The men that did this, where are they? And the mountain man sniffs him. He says, you're not like them. You're a forest creature, a wild thing. So he gives him the information. The men you seek are gone. They go to the factory island, the place where the cars, motorbikes, radios and TVs come from, and where all the money goes to. I like that phrasing too, the factory island. It's Japan. Let's go, he says to Tiger. Gotta find Archie, need transport. To where? To the land of, how am I going to pronounce this? Amaterasu, the sun goddess, to Japan. Yeah, that's a great page. This is a very well crafted issue in terms of the story, in terms of the characterization of Wolverine, in terms of what I was saying earlier about that there's a mature dimension to this particular story of Wolverine's. And I think Larry Hama enjoying himself with the dialogue and also with the kinds of things that he is giving Silvestri to draw, and Silvestri enjoying himself too with the art. And again, you can just see here with the Lamborghini, it's very clear that he's doing this out of his mind's eye, and it's all done freehand, no straight lines, but it works, it reads. So I do hope that you enjoyed this review and commentary on part 2 of a 3-part storyline featuring Wolverine, now about to go to Japan for the climax of the story. Let me know what you think of the issue itself in the comments to this video. And if you enjoyed my review and commentary, please like the video on YouTube. It really does help the channel. And if you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for more content like this.